Hello and welcome back to Nerd News. Today we have EA signing a 3-game deal with Marvel, and Bleach episode 4 aired yesterday and it was really great. Let's get started. First up, we have EA signing a 3-game deal with Marvel. They're going to be creating single-player action-adventure games, it appears. The first one is going to be Iron Man. They've not announced anything besides that. No release date or anything like that, obviously. And we don't know who the other characters they'll be making games on are. I mean, this could be good, I guess. If this turns out more like Jedi Fallen Order and less like Star Wars Battlefront, I think we're going to get somewhere. They did say it was going to be a single-player game, and that's really great. I would really like to play a good Iron Man game, so I'll be looking forward to this. I feel like Iron Man's a pretty easy one to make a game around. It can be very much like the Arkham games or the Spider-Man game. You know, Iron Man's smart, has a lot of money, he can build a lot of tech, easy to implement things like upgrades and just flying around and doing things. Really what that's going to come down to is, can they make a good story? And I don't think it's too hard to make a good Iron Man story. What more interests me is, what are the other characters they plan to do? I don't know who I want them to do, but I would really like a Doctor Strange game to get made. I feel like Doctor Strange has a lot of potential to create a good game. And then my personal bias would be anything Scarlet Witch. I don't think Scarlet Witch could hold up a game herself, but I don't really know how they do that. Anything Doctor Strange would probably work for me, but also if they could make like an X-Men game that has Scarlet Witch as like a main character, or even as like a playable character, that'd be great. And next up we have Nibellion leaving Twitter. More importantly, it appears they're just leaving game journalism altogether. Twitter has been completely blacked out. They said they're leaving the Twitter account up just so that no one else takes it and does anything, uses it to scam people or anything like that, but they just completely signed off. Here is the post that they left for this. After some introspection, I've made the decision to focus my time and energy elsewhere and move on from Twitter. This marks the end of my video games coverage and my active participation in the platform. Thanks to everyone for the fun times. Farewell, Nebel. P.S. I'll leave this account up just so no one grabs it for most purposes. So yeah, it sounds like they just decided to quit game journalism. If I remember correctly, they set up a Patreon like not that long ago, so maybe that just didn't work out and this wasn't, paying the bills, and that's understandable. It is really hard to keep up with game stuff the way they did. They were typically the first to cover something, so being that on top of it is incredibly hard, especially if you have a full-time job. But this not paying the bills, I guess they just decided that it was no longer a viable thing to do, even if it's just for their personal time. It sucks because they would post a lot of really good information and that it was an easy way to get access to things, but it is what it is. Sometimes this happens. You just, people can't do this forever. So it's sad, but it is what it is. Also, Twitter kind of sucks, so there's that. And next up, I just want to talk about the deck profiles that came out of the Dkayed luxury tournament over the last weekend. Most notably, I want to talk about the first, second, and fourth place deck profiles, because the first and the second place deck profiles are actually exactly the same. There is not a single card difference between them that is main, side, and extra. They are 70 cards of exactly the same. There's not a single change. And that is Tier Element, Ishizu, Tier Element, I guess. They chose the same ratios and the same card choices, but also the second place the person who came in second was also playing the same deck and almost exactly the same list. In this instance, there's a few small choices that are different. I don't know the names of all of these cards, and it's hard to see here, but they're not playing, or the second place list is playing 3 Aikido, I think it is, the orb-looking Ishizu card. The other one's playing 3, and it cuts a few cards that the others are playing just to fit that in, and instead of playing Super Poly, it's playing Droplets. But honestly, besides those minor changes, I guess the side deck's a little bit different as well. Note that all 3 decks are playing cherries. That's usually the sign of a bad format, because if you can expect cherries to resolve, that means you're planning to play against a significant amount of mirror matches. The winner and the 4th place list are maining Super Poly, but the 2nd place list was siding the Super Poly. That seems to be the only real consistency between the 3 lists. Sanctum, Scythe, and Lance made a pretty big comeback in the 1st and 4th place list, and Tikaboo is in the 2nd place list. Honestly, this just looks like a really, really unhealthy format, which is why I wanted to cover this. This just looks bad. Whenever you see this much representation from one deck and it looks almost exactly the same, you know there's a problem. These lists are for 2 lists to be identical, and then the 3rd list to be near identical, literally just a ratio change and 1 card choice difference. That's very, very similar. That means that they were basically all playing the same concept with just very small changes, even between the 2 lists that are different, but the other 2 lists are just exactly the same. So we're entering a tier 0 format. As good as Magnificent Mavens looks as a set, these Yugioh cards are not good. They are not going to be good for the game. They were already insane just on paper. Just reading them, they sounded really bad, and we saw what happened in the OCG where they just absolutely dominated. I think it's going to be worse here. Usually when cards come over, they don't a lot of times they don't transfer as well. Stuff that's good in the OCG is usually less good over here. But I have a strong feeling that this is good. Obviously, with this results, it's very good, but I have a feeling that this is going to be a tier 0 format, or very, very close to a tier 0 format. The ability to just deck out your opponent on turn 0 is insane. And while that doesn't really happen in the mirrors too much, because they can kind of recycle stuff, it's still... This doesn't sound like it's going to be fun. This doesn't sound like a fun format, to be honest. And sticking with the Yu-Gi-Oh theme, this is a quick one. We got an altar art for Dragon Maid Hospitality, and this one features all the Dragon Maid characters. Looks like they're setting up a lunch or a dessert. It's cool. I don't know enough about the Dragon Maid cards to know if this is a good card. I assume this is a good card though. But it's a nice artwork. I've been covering the alt arts. I didn't want to just skip on this one, but it's a nice artwork. And next up, I want to cover the Simpsons Treehouse of Horror for this year. I believe it came out Sunday. We did talk about I think last week, where they were doing a parody of Death Note called Death Tome. But we'll do the whole episode here just because. The first segment is Pukaduk. In this short, Marge is possessed by a book called Pukaduk, and she tries to murder Maggie, and honestly, it was a pretty fun segment. This might have actually been my favorite segment, to be honest, even though I was really looking forward to the Death Note one. This might have been my favorite segment. You don't get a whole lot of the rest of the family. This is really Marge and Maggie focused. But Maggie building a little bow and arrow out of crowns, and her the stacking donut toy was adorable and hilarious. Maggie making the stay out of blocks, that was obviously, that's kind of cliche, but that was pretty fun. And then just Marge's attempts to kill Maggie, and Maggie trying to convince Marge that remind Marge of her love for her by showing her pictures, and all the pictures that they have, Marge is being tormented by random events while everyone else is having a good time. It was pretty funny. Overall, the segment was good. Marge's voice sounds horrible. I haven't watched Simpsons, modern Simpsons, in a long time now. It's been several years. And I feel for her because the lady voicing Marge had the rasp that Marge has probably was damaging to her vocal cords, but you can tell she cannot make that voice anymore. It's just, she can't, and it sounds really, really rough. But even worse, she sometimes makes the Marge voice, and it fluctuates between a Marge voice and like a more, I guess, natural voice, and it doesn't sound good. I don't that it's a small complaint, but it really does not sound good. Overall, though, I thought the segment was pretty good. The Death Note segment was called Death Tone, and it was okay. They kind of just flew through it. I get that obviously they weren't going to squeeze the entire series of Death Note into a short segment like that, but I feel like they didn't really get much of the concept of Death Note across. They got some of it in the beginning with Lisa killing people to save the Earth from Burns and his global warming company or whatever they were calling it, which is cool. I like it. Lisa, the environmentalist, killing people to save the planet. It was fun, but they spent a little bit too much time, in my opinion, showing her kill people, and they move kind of past any other plot right into her finding out that the police are looking for her, and who's looking for her is Elle, and that cuts right to the end where she knows it's Bart, and that's it. That's the episode. It happens very quickly, and again, I get that it's a very small segment, but they moved it too quickly along, and I think they spent too much time on her killing people in weird ways and not enough time on some more of the story. It is a Treehouse of Horror, though, so I don't know what I was expecting. I'm not really a big fan of the Treehouse of Horror episodes. I never have been, so that just might be a me thing. I do like that Bart ended up being Elle from the series because of Elle Bartow, and that's how she connected it. I thought that was a great throwback. I don't know if they've been using El Barto, but I feel like they stopped using El Barto for a long time. So to see that brought back, even if they've been doing it, for me, that was new. So I really like that one. And that follows through to the next one with Simpsons World, where it's just Homer's a robot, I guess, or they call him an IP, an intellectual property, and he's just going through like his catchphrases and classic episodes, and you're just seeing a bunch of classic Simpsons reference. It's very self-referential, and that's kind of the joke, is that people complain about things referring to themselves too much or making pop culture references too much, and the whole segment is them making references to past classic episodes. That was fantastic. I thought it was really funny. But what I really liked was actually the ending where they end up at Bob's Burgers, and then they kind of zoom out to show how far they tried to travel to get the Bob's Burgers, and you get the Bob's Burgers world, you get the Simpsons world, South Park Park. There was a bunch of them. One of them was SpongeBob. That was great. Family Guy Town, I think it was. That part was great. I thought that was really funny. Overall, the episode was pretty good. I don't really watch Modern Simpsons too much, but I did enjoy it. I don't really enjoy the Treehouse of Horror episodes that often, so it was a nice treat. It's something I definitely got to get back into watching more often. And lastly, we're going to talk about Bleach episode 4. If you don't want any spoilers for this episode of Bleach, you can skip this. But yesterday, Bleach aired, and it was great. This is probably the best episode they've played so far, and it started out really strong, just right into covering all the deaths that have happened up until this point from the invasion. In the manga, this is the guy from the research development, Akon, talking, and I believe it is in this too. It's hard to tell the voices, honestly. Unless they're like distinctly in front of me, I kind of get lost with some of the voices, but at least for the smaller characters. But he's doing a voiceover talking about who's dead, where. I think it's like 1,000 people dead in 7 minutes. and the whole scene is just incredibly gruesome, with people just massacred all over the place. Obviously, we saw what Basby did to Squad 3, including Kira, but we see some of the other squads are just as bad off. I see Rose talking to Nanana about how he's sad, obviously, that his squad members have been killed, and you see their fight for a little bit. We get to see Kamamura fighting Bambietta. We get to see Reggie's fighting Asnu. Eventually, Byakuya shows up. Their fight was pretty solid for a while. I really like the scene of Byakuya's Shikai covering, like, swarming his head, and using the blue, it just doesn't do anything, and then you get the one petal, like, touching his eyeball, and he's, like, holding it off with it, and that was fantastic. We've seen with what his Shikai can do to other characters and other incredibly strong characters, so for him to be blocking it on his eye was just great. And then it moves, we get Ichigo fighting over in Hoiko Mundo, and he's interrupted by Kisuke Urahara, and eventually, he's on his way to the Soul Society, and he gets blocked off in a cage, and that's pretty much where the episode ends. Is Ichigo locked in a cage? He can't get to Soul Society. We all know if you read the manga, you know what's coming. Next week is probably going to be the best episode, maybe, of the series. I anticipate one of the best episodes of the series happening next week. Also, this episode, the Bankai got stolen from Hitsugaya, Byakuya, Soifan, and Kamamura. We learned what was actually happening to their Bankai. They're not being sealed away. They're being completely stolen. Again, if you read the manga, you already know this, but this is what's going to lead to a fantastic scene, and it should be next week. Cannot wait. I'm looking forward to this immensely. This is going to be the episode. This episode itself, though, was absolutely fantastic. I really enjoyed this, and again, just can't wait for more. My biggest complaint is that we gotta wait a week to get some more of it. That's really has been my only complaint, because I think they did everything pretty much perfectly here. I don't really have any complaints. I've had some minor complaints about some of the other episodes, but this one was damn near perfect. And that's all for today. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe down below, and let me know what characters you want to see EA make games for. We know they're doing Iron Man, but they announced a 3-game deal, so maybe 2 different characters. Again, I would really like to see Doctor Strange, but let's see what they can do. Let me know who you think they should be doing down below. And we'll be back tomorrow with more nerd news. Bye.